Hi there. Today we're going to talk about Vedas. Without wasting the time, let's get into the video. The Vedas. The Vedas are the religious texts which inform the religion of Hinduism, also known as Sanatan Dharma, meaning eternal order or eternal path. The term Veda means knowledge, in that they are thought to contain the fundamental knowledge relating to the underlying cause of, function of, and personal response to existence. They are considered among the oldest, if not the oldest, religious works in the world. They are commonly referred to as scripture, which is accurate in that they can be defined as holy right concerning the nature of divine. Unlike the scriptures of other religions, however, the Vedas are not thought to have been revealed to a certain person or persons at a specific historical moment. They are believed to have always existed and were apprehended by sages in deep meditative states at some point prior to 1500 BCE, but precisely when is unknown. The Vedas existed in oral form and were passed on from master to student for generations until they were committed to writing between 1500 to 500 BCE, the so-called the Vedic period, in India. They were carefully preserved orally as masters would have students memorize them forwards and backwards with emphasis on exact pronunciation in order to keep that what was originally heard intact. The Vedas are therefore regarded as Shruti in Hinduism, meaning what is heard, as contrasted with other texts designated Smritis, what is remembered. Accounts of great heroes and their struggles in works such as the Mahabharata, Ramayana and Bhagavad Gita. Although some sects of Hinduism regard the Bhagavad Gita as Shruti, the texts which make up the four Vedas are Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda and Atharva Veda. Each of these is further divided into types of texts included with them: Aranyakas, rituals, observances; Brahmans, commentaries on said rituals; Samhitas, benedictions, prayers, mantras; Upanishads, philosophical narratives and dialogues. The Upanishads are the best known and most often read of the Vedas because their discourse is presented in dialogue or narrative form, and they were the first to be translated into other languages. The four Vedas, conversely, are considered the literal sounds of the divine, which, recited or sung, recreate the primal vibrations of the universe. Accordingly, they are actually possible to translate, and what one reads in translation should be understood as a paraphrase at best. Orthodox Hindu denominations recognize the Vedas as a significant spiritual authority, but not all Hindu sects follow suit. Reform movements throughout the modern era, beginning in the 19th century CE, place greater value on personal religious experience than scriptural authority and tradition, and so some sects or shoots of Hinduism, such as Brahmos movement, reject the Vedas entirely as superstition. Even so, the works continue to be recited, studied, and venerated in the present and remain an important part of Hindu religious observances, festivals, and ceremonies. No one knows the origin of Vedas, although many scholars and theologians have advanced differing claims on the subject. It is commonly believed that the Vedic vision came to India by the way of nomadic Aryan tribes who migrated there from Central Asia sometime around the 3rd millennium BCE. Aryan should be considered as it was by the people of the time, meaning free or noble, a class of people, not a race, and not Caucasian, as was acclaimed by 18th and 19th century CE Western scholars. The Indo-Aryans are thought to have broken off from the larger group, which also included the Indo-Iranians, which settled in the region of modern-day Iran and came to be known in the West by the Greeks as Persians. Similarities between early Iranian religion and later Zoroastrianism and early Hinduism suggest a common belief system which then developed separately. The Indo-Aryan migration theory holds that Vedic vision was developed in Central Asia and brought to India during the decline of indigenous Harappan civilization, which is from 7000 to 600 BCE. between 2000 to 1500 BCE, merging the culture's beliefs with their own. Another theory, however, known as the Out of India, claims that Harappan civilization had already developed this vision and exported it from India to Central Asia, from whence it then returned with the migration of the Indo-Aryans. There are some reasons for recognizing the motivation that lays for either claim, though the OIT is rejected by mainstream academia, and scholars seem to hold one or the other more for personal reasons than any based on objective scholarly research. The most reasonable response to the question of the origin and the dating of Vedas is simply that one doesn't know. The human need to resolve what appears to be mysterious, however, keeps the debate alive in the present day. Scholars Hermann Kuhlke and Dietmar Rothermund comment briefly on the early development of the dating or origin issue. In his words, the dating of these texts and of the cultures that produced them has been debated for a long time by Indologists. The famous Indian nationalist Bal Gangadhar Tilak wrote a book on the archetypic home of the Vedas, in which he maintained that the Vedas could be dated back to the 6th or 5th millennium BCE. He based his conclusions on the interpretation of references to positions of the stars in the next, which could be used by astronomers for detailed calculation of the respective date. The German Indologist Hermann Jacobi independently arrived at a very similar conclusion and suggested the middle of the 5th millennium as the date of the Vedas. But another German Indologist, Max Muller, who was teaching at Oxford, projected a much later date. He took the birth of Buddha around 500 BCE as a point of departure and suggested that the Upanishads, which antedate Buddhist philosophy, must have been produced around 800 to 600 BCE. The earlier Brahmana and Mantra texts of the Vedas would then have been produced around 1200 to 1000 respectively. These dates projected by Max Muller tally very well with modern archaeological research, showing that at least half a millennium between the decline of the Indus civilization and the immigration of a new nomadic population, which might have been identified with the Vedic Indo-Aryans. Muller's works continues to inform the debate in the present day, and his claims are generally considered the most probable or even certain. Wherever the Vedic vision originated and however long it existed in oral form, it developed in India during the Vedic period after the arrival of Indo-Aryans. Now let's talk about the Vedic period. The Vedic period, which is from 1500 to 500 BCE, is the era in which the Vedas were committed to writing, but this has nothing to do with the age of the concepts or the oral traditions themselves. The designation Vedic period is a modern construct which relies on evidence of an Indo-Aryan migration, which is, as noted, is not universally accepted. Even so, that is the theory most commonly accepted as historically accurate based on the available evidence. The development of the text is described by scholar John M. Collar. In his words, the Vedic age began when the Sanskrit-speaking peoples began to dominate life and thought in the Indus Valley, probably between 2000 and 1500 BCE. Historians used to think that these Sanskrit-speaking peoples who have lived themselves Aryan came to Indus Valley in northwest India as conquerors some 3500 years ago. Much big one. But recent scholarship has challenged this thesis of conquering Aryans. What we do know is that the earlier Indus culture, which flourished from 2500 to 1500 BCE and which, judged by its archaeological remains, was quite sophisticated, declined by it at its time. We also know that the Vedic thought and culture reflected in the Rig Veda has a continuous history of dominance in India during the last 3500 years. Here all you need to know about the Vedas. Please do subscribe, comment and like the video.